Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings like you having a human experience, ready to ignite the mastery inherent in you, as well as grow and expand from within and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to activate the mastery already within you, here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business and work with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, teacher, spiritual business coach, and radical love rebel Maria Serafina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. I serve leaders, executives, and business owners wanting to learn and be supported as they navigate leading with heart and soul. I do that through the Spiritual Leadership Academy, the Spiritual MBA, and one-on-one spiritual business coaching, all of which you can find out more about on my website, mariaserafina.com. The number one thing my clients always tell me they leave our sessions with is clarity, which is why I've transformed the process I've used for almost a decade, Divine Clarity and Aligned Action, into a free guide for you. Go to mariaserafina.com/DCAA to download it. In less than 60 minutes, this will give you peace of mind, crystal clear clarity, and guide you in plotting your path and next step. If you enjoy Mastery, please do subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so it can reach more and more gorgeous, radiant beings just like you. Today I'm joined by the beautiful soul that is Adele Hauwai 45, a social entrepreneur and New Zealand Maori indigenous woman. With a background in special education and entrepreneurship, her work is firmly founded in wanting to make a real difference in society, as you'll recognize in her business Globe Domes. Adele shares her spiritual journey and how it's intertwined with her indigenous Maori culture, emphasizing the importance of recognizing the spiritual connections in life. We discuss the need to reconnect with nature and our ancestral knowledge, highlighting the importance of breaking free from societal patterns and ties to the material world. If you're listening to this via podcast, I encourage you to go to my website to watch Adele as she shares, because as you'll see, she speaks with her entire body, painting and weaving beautiful pictures with her hand gestures as well. Please note that we've got different microphones, and so the sound varies throughout. This was a deeply reconnecting conversation, and I hope you will enjoy it. Here is today's sacred conversation. Adele, a big warm welcome to Mastery. You came highly recommended by a dear former client of mine, and I am so excited to be having this sacred conversation with you, to have you share our wisdom, your wisdom and whatever is going to arise in this conversation. But first, I would love for you to just start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, anything that comes to heart and mind, really.
Hi, I'm Maria. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Adele Hauwai. I'm currently living in Australia, but I am originally of New Zealand Maori descent from New Zealand. Even if we pronounce the Maori name for New Zealand, Aotearoa. I know there's a lot of fancy words that I'm going to pronounce, but I'll just share the dialogue as I go. And so I will even say that even recently, a few years ago, I got my DNA test done, and so I found out that I'm from a lot around the Pacific, especially even 11% Hawaiian.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I've got it. Like all of us, we're all made of a bit of everything.
Yes.
That's in terms of the blood, the genetics, things like that. But thanks for this opportunity that I have to share a bit about me, about my own background. We all have something behind us, as they say, a story to share. And so I will say that as much as I am of New Zealand Maori, indigenous culture from Aotearoa, New Zealand, I do enjoy even just the fascinations of multiple different cultures as such.
Mm.
It even reminds me of that movie called Avatar.
Mm.
Avatar, where everything has spirit, everything has life, and that even relates a lot to our Maori culture. That it's not just humans, people that have spirits, but even
Yes.
trees, even nature, even fish, even
Yes.
animals. Everything has spirit, everything has life. Yeah, but apart from that, also, of course, I come from different backgrounds when it comes to education studies. I studied a few education degrees, including special education in the disability field,
Mm.
disability sector, and also I've been involved. One of my passions is entrepreneurship, especially more in the social enterprise space.
Mm.
I've always had a passion to be able to help make a difference in the world, whatever that means. And that does include the mental health space, and even where suicide rates have been very high amongst Indigenous cultures or LGBTQA communities, or even amongst males, all these different communities. There's always a cause and a reason why things happen the way they do. And so,
Mm.
the way that I see it, even looking at things from a more spiritual perspective, is that sometimes you need to know the root cause, the meaning as to why people say and do what they do.
Mm.
What is the meaning, the underlying meaning behind the actions, not just surface value as to what they look like front on, but
Mm.
it's more who are they as a whole and
Mm.
such. So I've always had quite a holistic, a whole perspective of life. Sometimes when growing up, my siblings would say, just be simple. Just see things as they are in front of you. But I'll just say, with my neurodivergent thinking, I've always had a lot of different perspectives of the same thing. I'll put it that way. And so
Mm.
I just call it being creative. And overall, even what I encourage just growing up later on in life is just be you, be authentic. Be you. That's the best advice I
Yeah.
can give to people. But it's a world of discovery to
Yeah.
find out who are we, because are we the same when we were children? Are we the same when we were
Yeah.
teenagers? And so on and so on. It's a forever
Yeah.
evolving and changing things. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah. But thank
That
you for
is such.
this opportunity to be able to
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. That is so. Um, it's such a ripeness about like who were we as children, who were we as teenager, who were we as adults, and even as adults we go through different renditions of ourselves as well, right? So my very first question is going to be, um when did you when did your spiritual journey begin, if it's even conscious, or um when did when and how did your spiritual journey begin in life or in work and business? How did it begin? When did it begin?
Mm. Oh, this is a very, yeah, I'll even call it sensitive question as
Mm.
such. But I call it sensitive because I have to say that spirituality has really been an experience throughout my whole
Mm.
life's journey. In our Indigenous Maori culture, we believe in such things like spirits of people who have passed on,
Mm.
and also even before life as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know this may be a bit sensitive. That's what
Mm.
I call it. But I'll just put it this way: is that a bit like that movie Avatar, as I brought up before,
Mm.
that we believe that there is spiritual connections, ngako ki te ngako. That means heart to heart. Wairua ki te wairua.
Mm.
Wairua is the Māori word for spirit,
Mm.
spirit to spirit. And so even like when we breathe life into, newborn children and all, we also empower women and the life that we bring to children as we give
Mm.
them life and breath even when they are inside the mother. And
Mm.
of course, when they get born, it's life starts when they, basically when they're inside the womb and so on. And so I can go into a lot of other terminology and words about
Mm.
what it means, but even our culture, we've always been a very spiritual culture
Mm.
as such. And so even just some of the buildings in New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, they represent women. One of the common greeting houses is called a marae. but marae, and it has a lot of Maori carvings at the front. And then when you walk into the marae, the door entrance, you can see the roofings. Now, all of that is basically the entrance into a woman's womb.
Oh, wow.
Entrance into a woman's womb, and then the roofings represents the rib cage of the woman and
Wow.
so on. So therefore, and all the basically even the designs on the roofings basically represents even the umbilical cords and even the basically the life that it gives to the child, the baby. And
Wow.
so that's so therefore when you talk about spirituality, I've basically been born into it, not just because of that building over there, but it's basically what we breathe, what we hear, what we see,
Yes.
what we feel, what we eat. I've
Yes.
always been a very symbolic culture. And
Yes.
so myself, coming from of descents, both my parents are of, well, I'd say, but of mixed cultures, but especially of New Zealand Maori descent,
Mm,
Polynesian descent. It's not just a Maori thing, but even when you spread out to even around the Polynesian cultures, which even goes back to
mm,
Native Americans and
mm,
even to Southeast Asia. We
mm,
do a lot of what we call whakapapa, family history, is
mm,
that a lot of the traditions have been passed down,
mm,
learned behaviors, traditions. And so this is where symbolism of like
mm,
sacrifices on fires and things like that have been
mm,
passed on. And this
mm,
could be decades, generations, centuries later, that
mm,
a lot of the, spirituality, especially, we may not have the same buildings or the same
mm,
pyramids or whatever it is that were a few centuries ago, but the spiritual meaning gets passed on.
mm.
And so I know that it's quite an in-depth, sensitive answer to what you just shared there, but that's basically what I've been born into is how there's life more than just what you say, the words that you say, or a book that you read.
Yes.
There's more depth and meaning to that tree over there, that
Yes.
animal over there, even the birds that are over there. When we see a trail of rats running away, what does that mean? We know that there's a tidal wave coming.
Yes.
Because they can feel that the water is reaching their homes underneath. And so when they're departing, that's a sign that our ancestors learned to depart our villages so that, because we know that a tidal wave is coming. So being able to read all the different nature signs and all, that's where when I watched that movie Avatar, I was like, wow, that I feel that there's connection,
Mm,
meaning. At first when I was a young girl, it was like rebellious. I know I like maths and English and science and I want to learn this way. And whilst
yes.
that has a place,
Yes.
sometimes, especially like what we were saying earlier, that you can't run away from being you.
Mm,
You can have a season where, if you want to call it rebellious, where you're just fitting into the norm, whatever
mm,
that is,
mm,
of society. And that can chop and change from generation to generation, which town you live in, which country you live in,
mm,
and all. But overall, when it comes to like what I've, been experiencing, even going through this midlife crisis, if you want to call it that, is
mm,
that I have this Maori saying question. It's pronounced this way, ko wai o. That means who am I? Who am I? As a collection of everything that I've been through, am I still that person that I was that society wanted me to be as a teenager, trying to look cool, or I need to go down that career pathway,
mm,
or I need to learn that language, whatever it is. So overall, it's more of being able to like sometimes undo all the layers,
mm,
undo all the different experiences of that. Whilst it had a season for me to do that career path or to learn that language or whatever it is, overall it's just being able to reflect on ourselves and wonder, is this my real authentic me, or is
mm.
there more to discover? And that is a very open-ended question. We
Yes.
are, am I the
Yes.
same as I was on the 1st of January last year? I would say
Yes.
no.
Yes.
No. And yeah, so as I said, it's a bit of a sensitive question when it comes to the meaning of life, because yeah, I've always been a spiritual person, and I'm not just saying like in a religious term, but more in a deep cultural perspective of how we see life.
Yes.
We believe in what's called ngako, like having a spiritual eye to be able to see, believe that trees have spirits, that
Mm,
everything has life. It's not just us humans, but anything
mm.
that is alive and breathing in their own different ways.
Yes.
We believe that's life. And it may be a bit different to what we learn out there in society, but
Yeah.
overall, let's embrace whatever it is that your core beliefs, your core values are. And that's part of
Yes.
my own core values. I've always been a spiritual person from basically since I've been inside my mother. And
Yes.
even when we believe, just like recently, my uncle passed away, but we believe that his spirit is basically reconnected with other family on the other side as well. So, yeah, life goes on according to what I believe personally,
Yes,
individually, and also even what I've learned amongst my our Maori culture, Polynesian cultures. It's very
yes,
common.
yes.
Hmm.
And so I'm realizing with that simple question and sensitive question, your your spiritual journey never quote unquote began because it never ended. It had
Correct.
an origin point, and then from there it's continuously expanded. This I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm.
Yes.
It's so beautiful. It's making me almost tear up, or it's making me tear up. It's very, very beautiful that there is this continuation. There is there's a quote from A Course in Miracles, which I is very quote unquote Christian in nature, even though it's metaphysical. It says like death or birth was not the beginning and death is not the end, because there is this continuation of life so wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That was very, very, very deep. um and it's also making me, there are some thoughts that are coming up in terms of um you know European, about whiteness, about white people, about colonizing, about all of this in terms of um, did we quote unquote deny the origin, the spirituality, and that is why so many of us are seeking our ways back to it, um, and why there is this drive towards the holistic approach. And before we came on, I shared how I see how important I see the indigenous peoples of the world and the cultures of the world in the survival of the world, because you have the medicine, you have the wisdom, which has been ignored, denied, suppressed for far too long. Okay, so wow, we're off to a and then we took off, we dove straight in. You mentioned how for a while during your childhood that you sort of I don't know if it was abandoning your roots, but more of like you were called towards something else. When did you, if it, I don't know if the right word is find your way back, or when did things start to click in for you? And I want to say that I share the idea, not even the idea, the I don't even know if it's a belief. For me, it's more of a knowledge that everything has life, everything has spirit. Um, yeah, that's the way I view the world. So when did you when did it begin to click for you, or when did it begin to I know I maybe not be making any sense. Am I, do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
no,
ask
you're
you?
making sense.
Good,
I understand what you're asking.
good.
Um, well, I'll just say that really, regardless of what ethnicity, what gender, what who you are, we are all needing to discover ourselves.
Yes,
Whatever that means.
yeah.
Regardless of what background we come from. And I can even say that even like with our biological, brothers and sisters, siblings, that we are still our own unique individual selves,
Yes,
whatever that means.
yes,
Yeah, I mean, I can go down the pathway of having times when our language was banned and when
yes,
our old language was banned, and a lot of things were suppressed to introduce a lot of these other ways of living.
yes.
However, what I want to emphasize here is that just like just like there's a time when you just know when that is you or not. You
Yeah,
can try sometimes in our early days we're trying to fit in, and it's like again trying to put a peg in a square hole. A
yes,
circle is a circle, circle, and a
yeah,
square is a square.
yes,
Let them be.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
trying to fit in, into society,
Yeah.
with our peers, in with that
Yeah.
job, in with whatever mum and dad, what our
Yeah.
parents wanted us to do,
Yeah.
when overall we have to accept even our more intuition, our own intuition tells us that,
Yes.
why are you trying to be someone else?
Yes.
Just be you.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then even the deeper question is, if that's not me, when I'm so used to being down in that career pathway
Mm.
for a while, and it has its norm. You could be earning the salaries, the income,
Mm.
and you're keeping up with the Joneses of technology and
Yes.
everything. But
Yes.
you also hear a lot of them, I hate my job,
Mm.
doing it for the money.
Yes.
Or, well, we just, that's just how life is.
Mm.
And yes, well, that has a place. It's just that really it takes a lot of quiet courage to actually break out of that norm. If you even want to
Yes.
call it a norm, of trying to fit in with the normalities of
Mm.
society,
Mm.
whatever that means. And hey, that is forever changing too, especially post COVID, what had impacted the world.
Yes.
It used to be, even like in the South Pacific here, it used to be a lot of the like lawyers, teachers, those types of jobs were up there with the Joneses. But as the borders closed and international students weren't allowed to come in anymore, a lot of them with those types of degrees had lost their jobs.
Mm.
And so all of a sudden, you must be a lawyer, you must be a doctor. Well, don't get me wrong, they have their place. If that's your
Mm.
passion, do it.
Mm.
But then a lot of those that more got shifted into more labour, hands-on
Mm.
type work
Yes.
that the governments were supporting. Now,
Yes.
I bring up those matters because these days we very much we have to fit in with society of keeping up with technology, keeping up with everything. But what happens when the next power cut happens? What happens when the next disaster happens? Do we know how to grow our own gardens like what our grandparents used to do? Do we
Mm.
know how to live with just only candles, without having to think that, because the technology doesn't work, I'm going to die? Well,
Yes.
like what I even share with my son is that you're still alive even without your
Yes.
phone. It's not a life machine. And sometimes, we learn a
Yes.
bit of wisdom from our own parents
Yes.
that yes, we need technology, just like this call, we need
Yes.
technology. But at the end of the day, our grandparents, they knew how to connect with the earth. They knew
Mm.
when to plant
Mm.
vegetables. They
Mm.
knew the seasons. And in our Maori culture, we have what's called matariki.
Mm.
That's basically means the Maori New Year. And I know that there's a lot of countries, even right now in China,
Mm.
celebrating the Chinese New Year
Yes.
and all. There's many different cultures that celebrate that New Year. Now, I'll just expand a little bit into our Maori New Year called
Yes, please.
matariki.
Yes.
So matariki, there's two meanings to the words. Matariki is basically means tiny eyes, tiny eyes. So there was like in Maori stories, there was a god who basically he was the god of the sky,
Mm.
um, and um, and basically matariki was the story of it. If I put it in a summary,
Mm.
is basically he was angry with how life was, so he pulled out his eyes and he threw it into the sky, and they became the set group of stars called Matariki stars. And
Mm.
so every year, our Māori people would follow the stars. And basically, every time they started to see the rise of the new stars, which is around about May every
Mm.
year in New
Mm.
Zealand,
Yep.
basically they'd celebrate Matariki Māori New Year. And it was only a few years ago that the New Zealand government made it an official public holiday
Wow.
as such. And so that's where everyone celebrates life now. It's become an official public thing to be able to run public events, such things like being able to sing what's called Māori songs, even we call them kapahaka. That's the
Yeah.
Māori traditional songs of
Yeah.
poi and haka and celebrating.
Yeah.
Even there's gatherings early hours of the morning to be able to watch the sun go up. That normally happens along the east coast of New Zealand. And so therefore a whole lot of people, they start to cry. Now, of course, why are people crying? Overall, we call it tangi wero. Basically, we're crying out to our ancestors who have passed on, because like what we spoke about, we believe in not just people who are living,
Mm.
but people who are living.
Yes.
Everyone is living according to what we know. And so therefore it's
Yes.
acknowledging those that have passed on
Yes.
physically, but also even embracing new life of children who are born into this life. It's basically yeah, basically the cycle of life as we know. And so that's basically what we do when we gather out to the oceans, and then we start to see the rise of the sun and we see that group of stars. We celebrate and we sing, we cry, we dance, we celebrate, and yeah, have those matariki
Yeah,
celebrations every year, around about the middle of the year every year. And
yeah.
so I am personally grateful that finally even the New Zealand government acknowledged and made it a public holiday as
Mm,
such. And of course, even there's other different events that happen,
yeah,
food and celebrations, live, and even that's a time season when even they start to plant vegetables out in fields, because we know reading the stars, we know the seasons of life. It's not
yes,
just January to December.
yes,
In
yes,
fact, sometimes we even come to think, when did months of the year even start? When did January start? February,
exactly.
March, da 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 da. Is
Yes,
that, has it always been a thing, way back in the history of time, or did it only evolve over the past century?
yes,
And all of us going by this date, this time, whereas even like my ancestors, they more went by the seasons of knowing how to know when to plant things,
yes,
and also even there's like questions about like even when they used to travel on their own, what we call waka boats out sea.
yeah,
Oh, what happened? Did they get lost? And did they have a compass? And all said, well, they had the natural compass and
yes,
such. They followed the stuff. Oh, he needed life jackets and everything. I said, look, they had their own, they had their own
yes,
resources.
yes,
If people like
yes,
even over in Egypt can build pyramids
yes,
without the bulldozers and
yeah,
and all things, that
yes,
basically our ancestors, they had their
yes,
natural resources too.
yes,
And
yes.
sometimes I think about like when they look down at us with all our resources here, sometimes I think, oh, they're scratching their heads wondering what are they doing?
They're
If
going,
you get what I'm saying there.
yes,
I said, look,
absolutely.
you've
Yeah,
got hands. You don't need to just order it and get it
yeah,
delivered to your door. You can actually put your shoes on, go for a walk, and get
yes.
things yourself.
There's such a depth and the word that keeps coming up for me in what you share is connection, connection, connection. There is such a connection to everything. And in that, what I also see is that there's also, quote unquote, the disconnection that a lot of people feel or have felt. So when you describe layers, what I see is like who we are is who we are. And in order for us to recognize who we are, it's about lifting the veils that are hindering our whether it's our sight or our senses. It's about lifting those veils that have been quote unquote placed upon us or we have taken upon us to come into seeing who we are, because that which we are I think is impermeable. It's we've always been it, but we have, like you say, layers that are hindering that experience of it. And in order for us to recognize when it is time to sow and to harvest, to plant, to nurture, to all of these things, that happens, as far as I can tell from what you're sharing, through connection with the land, through the sensing of the waters in the earth, through the motion of air, through the motion of tremor in earth, like all of that. So it's a connection, and I think that's part of what's quote unquote wrong in the world is the disconnection. We have removed ourselves so far from the origin of food sources of we go into the grocery store and we look down and we just pick and choose, but we don't know where they're coming from. We don't see how they're grown. We don't. Yeah. So okay, so thank you. My next question I think will be how does all of this inform your work? And I know you also have a business. How does this inform that? And how does this inform your daily life, your daily being in this world?
Mm,
That's a
yeah,
big
good question.
question.
Oh, yeah. I will say very, first and foremost, in answer to that question, is that even according to our Polynesian Māori cultures, we have always been entrepreneurs, if we want to put it that way. We've
Oh,
always been our own bosses. We never had heard of employees and working for others. There were
oh,
whalers, fishers, carvers, people who, set up stores and made their own clothing out of
mm,
animal furs and things
mm,
like that. We had never heard of this term of working under other people, like how the education systems are set up. They
yeah.
teach you, especially typically these days, I don't know about on the other side of the world, but even in the South Pacific, is that you're
Yes.
taught to work for others. Now, in today's society, it has its place.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, we're very dependent on other people's knowledge, to be able to work. But
mm,
like what I said, even like what at young ages is that we learn to get our hands dirty. We learned to
mm,
go whaling, we learned to go fishing, and
mm,
even like wasn't even that many generations ago when just hearing the stories of my great grandparents, my grandparents about
mm,
being whalers and fishers, and
mm,
some of
mm.
the photos right beside a whale. I said, wow, it's hard enough just to see a whale even at here in Australia, even at SeaWorld.
Yes,
you
yes,
know, at
yes.
theme
Oh,
parks. It's like what our grandparents used to do. It's like almost like a rare thing now. It's like there's all these
yeah,
I'll call it red tapes,
yeah.
red tapes of, oh, you're not allowed to, and you need a certificate to do that, and you need to. When again, put things aside. Yes, every generation has its own highs and lows. More
Mm,
people got sick back then. There's more medical cares these days. There's all
mm,
these different
mm,
changes for every
mm,
generation.
mm,
But like what you were saying before about, these layers, all these different layers, even sometimes unconsciously, we don't even know that we've got layers
mm.
on us. But what I will say to that is that our spirits know.
Yes,
Our spirits know when that is
yes,
us or not. It's
yes,
just all the matter of, are we in tune with it?
yes,
Sometimes
yes.
I even put it that, is my head connected to my heart, or is
Mm,
it completely the other
yes,
way around? Am
yes,
I going about just kind of living
yes,
that life, I'll just call it
yes,
there, of just keeping up with how society shapes me?
yes,
Am I allowing society to shape me?
yes,
Or sometimes you have to be that authentic you. Sometimes it takes a bit of age to actually to say this, that
yes,
sometimes it's called, you know,
yes,
life, society, who cares? It's all
yeah,
the matter of who am I and what do I
yes,
want out of it. And it
yes,
does sometimes take a bit of age to realize that life is precious, time is
yes,
short. What do
yeah,
I want to experience in life? Am I
yes,
really wanting to know who my grandparents were, not just by name, but even what did they learn? What did they do? What did they do for an upbringing? What is their
yes,
language and everything about them? Of my different experiences, because over the past 8 years before I moved back to Australia last year, I went back to New Zealand, and it was a bit of a scary time for me because I had went through that time period of, no, I don't need to know about my Maori culture. I don't need, no, I'm here keeping up with the Joneses, career life and traveling the
mm,
world. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Beautiful connecting with other cultures and people,
yes,
even living the high life of work. But sometimes there's these patterns of life where you just have this little chitter chatter voice, that
yes,
little what we call this, the spiritual experience where,
yes,
yes, whilst you've done what you've done, overall, is that really you?
yeah,
Or do you know who you are? Is that you? Or maybe was that just a chapter of your life?
yes,
And so therefore, when I went back to New Zealand, it was even just starting to be a bit vulnerable, if I want to call it that,
yeah,
where, because at first I was quite a bit ashamed because I wasn't brought up with my indigenous language, Maori language. It was
mm,
more in the colonised generation where we weren't allowed to speak in Maori. At
yeah,
schools we were hit, and yeah, it was a very no back then. And so
yeah,
therefore, um, just being able to think, yeah, that's great. And I'm not putting aside English or other cultures, but overall, is it me?
yeah,
Is it me? And even sometimes it takes a bit of, age, and it was like, oh, is it too late? I should have learned this when I was
yeah,
young or a teenager, and I'm a bit late. And so therefore hearing, finally, when we were allowed to speak our Māori language again at schools, the government's allowed it again, and they reintroduced it back in the 80s, 90s. And so it slowly has crept in back into um, into schools and communities, even the fact that younger children, it's a fluent language now. And so sometimes a few of us older ones have stepped back and said, even they're more fluent than us. And
Yeah.
but of course, when I went back to New Zealand, I think, okay, whilst I may not be fluent at my indigenous language, overall for me, what does it mean to be me, my
Mm,
version of my own
mm,
authentic self? And
mm,
I'm not just even saying this from a ethnicity perspective, but it's a bit of everything from my own. Overall, what I've learned throughout life is that all your choices in life come back to your core beliefs, your
mm,
values. They
mm,
are the core, the foundation of
mm,
what you eat, who you
mm,
hang out with, the career
mm,
path, if you choose a religion or
mm,
whatever it is, it
mm,
comes back to your belief system,
mm,
your core belief system. And so therefore, when that little voice kept coming in, even I've had spiritual visits from my grandmothers, spiritual
mm.
visits, it's almost like this shake heads. What are you doing? Go do what you need to do and connect with your cousins, your relatives. And I said,
Yes.
goodness, do you still
Yes.
have that talk even as a spirit?
Yes.
It's almost like, and
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yes,
Yeah.
Nan, like it's like they're around. It's
Yes.
like, okay, okay,
Yes.
okay, I get the message, I will. And so
Yes.
that's how it was for me, is that
Yes.
yeah, I felt the presence of both of my grandparents from my mother and father's side.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so therefore I finally was able to go visit some of the cemeteries, what we call urupa, cemeteries, and be able to just sit there and breathe. Because for me, what I've learned is that not everything has words.
Mm,
Language is a
mm,
whole world in itself too.
mm,
What you feel, what you see, what you
mm,
smell, even just being there
mm.
is a whole world of communication in
Yes.
itself. And
Yes.
sometimes we can't even verbalize everything that we've felt. And
Mm,
so even when I was able to even look up family history and to be able to go to the different land areas that my parents had never introduced because they were not allowed to, sometimes I'll put it this way, that when you ask parents, well, why didn't you teach me my family history? And why don't you know this? Sometimes they don't know either.
mm.
And because they weren't taught, it was basically like what we're saying, this disconnection,
Yes.
of, or colonization, whatever it is, disconnection to their own identity. But because of what they've been brought up, their own learned behaviors and everything,
Yeah.
they don't even know that it's even a thing. And so, but for myself, I've always, as I said, been a spiritual person. And so sometimes my siblings call it, oh, you're so rebellious. Why don't you just be normal, whatever that means. Whereas me, I've always had this curious mind of,
Yes.
people go that way. I wonder how you go that way. I've always been this, well, you just do you and I'll do me and I'll
Yeah.
go that
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
instead of that way.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying here. So
Yes.
I've just always, there's this little voice where I can just try and fit in. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just do it their way. But then this back little chitter chatter voice saying, no, you know
It
that's not
never
you.
works.
Just
Yeah.
be
It never
you. And
works.
so just go find out your family
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
Go find out who you really are. And
Yeah.
sometimes you try and shoo that voice away and because you're just trying to get along with people, even siblings
Yes.
and whoever it is. But
Yes.
overall, sometimes again, like what I said, it's just called life is
Yeah.
short. I've only got this time and I need to just overall
Yeah.
help to pull out the
Yeah.
authentic me. Even getting to know my family history from all four grandparents, I felt when I finally was able to go to the different land blocks that my parents are from, my
Yeah.
grandparents, there's this what we call this wider feeling, this welcome home feeling,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can't really verbalize it, but it's almost like this welcome home.
Yes.
And it's like,
The
oh, who's
resonance, right?
home
It's
there?
like it's a
Who,
sensation. Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I was just like driving in my car and I'm going down this road, entering into the land, and you just feel welcome
Yes.
home. I said,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to put into words, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying is that being able to feel, it's almost like you're at peace with
Yes.
life. And even sometimes you could have had an
Yes.
exam due last week or a bill to pay, whatever it
Yes.
is, it doesn't matter anymore.
No. I
It
like to
doesn't matter
say,
anymore. And that's basically just
yeah.
even like connecting with the earth, with nature, with life.
Yes.
at peace. Yeah.
Yes, and
Mm,
and and I love how you,
yeah.
because I share this often as well. There's things that are far beyond human comprehension, because for me, we're spirit expressed, we're life expressed in a human form, and we cannot. There are experiences that are so far beyond what can be translated by this physical body, that is, an experience, and like you said, peace beyond, like, I have these moments of, like, I call them orgasmic peace, because it's like it's such a it's like the my entire being is in resonance with everything that is in resonance with life, and when it just, yeah, it can't be translated. So I totally hear you. um I think that it's such a important point to highlight, that your parents didn't know either, because it was essentially beat out of them. It was essentially like, and that, yeah, that always gets me. One of the things
Yeah,
you
I
mentioned.
know that can be, yeah, I know that can be a sensitive, topic for different generations of such things like colonization and indigenous communities and all sorts of different things. And so I will say that I myself, I don't take sides with anything or
No.
anyone. I understand that we all come from different backgrounds, and even when I've attended different conferences and different experiences, we all have some memories of our own ancestors, some
Mhm.
experiences we're proud of, some not so proud of.
Yeah,
Whatever it is that I would come to realize that everyone is human. Sometimes as a
yeah,
little kid, we think that parents are perfectly healthy, they know everything, they are rich, they're full of money, and everything like
yeah,
that. But reality kicks in that
yeah,
we are all human, regardless of
yeah,
which generation we're
yes,
from,
yes,
and even which country with which language we speak. That we're all
yeah,
human. We
yeah,
come with our own DNA, our own makeup
yeah,
of whoever it is. And
yeah,
but it is a very individual experience, at least from what I've experienced.
yeah,
Overall, to overall pull out the overall, who are you today as an
yeah,
outcome of
yeah,
generations of
yes,
this language, of that culture,
yeah,
of that gene, that the
yeah,
the looks, the features of our
yeah,
grandparents, all these different things.
yeah,
Um, we have our first physical genes, but then also there's our spiritual makeup as well.
yes,
And I
yes,
believe in both. And so, like what I've learned over time, and I'm still evolving, is that
yeah,
my core values. I've always had a heart to per se like to help to change the world.
mm,
And as much as I've been offered different career paths of, high corporate career paths, I've always
mm,
come back to this
mm,
overall: what difference have I made in the world?
mm,
Of all things, it's not like when I'm on my deathbed, how much is in my bank,
mm,
or how big is my house, or whatever it is. It's overall, what differences have we made in communities, and that has been a very a common thing even in our culture.
yeah,
Maori culture is what we call whakawhanaungatanga. That's basically the word for extended family. That
mm,
we're all, it's not just biological families that we believe in.
mm,
We don't just believe in brothers and sisters.
mm,
We believe in villages. Sometimes that saying, it takes, a
mm.
village to raise a child,
Yes.
as such, and that's true. But a lot of families are lost because we think that it's only a mum, dad, that's how we say
Yes.
things, mum, dad,
Yes. Yes.
siblings, brothers,
Yes.
sisters,
Yes.
cousins. Excuse
Yes.
my
Yes.
my Kiwi
Yes.
pronunciation of words.
Yes.
Yeah, but again, that's like a very nuclear model,
Yes.
and we come to think about, when did that model come into place?
Yes.
Because if we go back a few generations ago, it used to be very much a village experience,
Exactly.
not just a siblings only, legally by law, that you can only like live
Yes.
together, or you
Yes.
can only raise the child if
Yes.
you're that way
Yeah.
related,
Yes.
whatever it is. But it wasn't that long ago that it was a whole village raising each other.
Mm.
It was
Exactly.
a
Yes.
community, very much. But we come to look at society these days, is that we come to think do we even say hi to our neighbors? Do we know who our neighbors are? Do
Yes.
we know? Do we know? Do we know? Or we
Yes.
are very much kind of, I'll just say, lost because it's been
Yes.
very independent. What we're just taught is to keep to
Yes.
ourselves and we have to keep safe. And yes, that has its place. But at
Connection.
the end of the day, even sometimes all we need is what we naturally learn is aroha, love, kindness.
Yes.
That's the Maori word for love, is
Yeah.
aroha. We need more kindness. It's not just, oh, I'm not allowed to give you any help because I don't know you well. It's all the matter of sometimes it takes natural disasters to find out if our neighbours are safe, and that's the first time you've said hi to them.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
it's just strange how it takes disasters or
Yes.
power cuts to see if their power is working to actually find out, by the way, what's your name? You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
yeah, and so just sometimes it's like we subconsciously don't even know that we don't know other
No.
people anymore, that
We're
we are
yeah.
very to ourselves,
Yeah.
that we're in our own,
Yes.
things, whatever that means. When
Yes.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes without having to wait for this worst case scenario of the next volcano to erupt or the next earthquake to
Yeah.
happen, is that put things down, put the phone down even,
Yes.
and actually go say hi to that person.
Yes.
It
Yes.
wasn't that long ago. I know, be safe. We get that. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's also cool that sometimes people just need a hi. They
Yeah.
just need to know that someone cares in life.
Yeah.
And so I'm sharing this because, like what I said here, that overall, that's what I've been reflecting on more of all the projects, of the businesses that I want to start up or join. Overall, what difference am I going to make in this world? That's
Mm.
basically the learnt behaviours, the cultural traditions that is always run amongst our culture. Is
Mm.
to overall, how can we help other people? It's never just me, myself, and I. It's always been whakawhanaungatanga of helping other communities
Yes.
and things. And sometimes even when I've had other European friends, and I've had lots of mixed friends of different races and cultures. They said, "How do you do that? Why are you so kind?" I said, well, I'll put it this way, is that our people, we've come to learn that there's also some brain cells in our hearts too, not just
Yes.
our heads.
Mhm.
And so we've learned to think with our hearts.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
just the logical way of life,
Yes.
like seeing things for what they are, but it's actually
Yes.
seeing things deep,
With the heart.
inside, yeah, with the heart, as to overall, not just what do you think, it's more how do you feel. And
Mm.
so, and that's how we go in terms of overall, are we helping, other people to feel included,
Yes.
inclusive,
Yeah.
inclusive of society, inclusive of love,
Yeah.
inclusive of employment, of
Yes.
education, of, mental health support. And so those are the types of projects that I've been involved with for business,
Yeah.
running social enterprise businesses, and even currently running my business Globe Domes. We've been helping with homeless people, helping even teaching women, because building is a very male dominated industry in the world. It's the highest male dominated industry.
Oh,
And so
okay.
even, yeah, out of all of them, technology, building and all, that's the number one, is we're
Wow.
expecting to be masculine in order to build, but that sometimes it's just what has been learned over time,
Well,
that men do
women are
this
usually
and
a lot
women
in the
do
house.
that.
So yeah, so they would
Yeah.
they would need to be involved in how do they want things to be in the house. That sounds like a great
Yeah.
idea. Sorry, go ahead. I
Yeah,
cut you off.
yeah. But I mean, overall, this comes back to that question: who am I? Am I still going with the, I cook meals and I help raise the
Mm,
children, and
mm,
a lot of these things
mm,
that have happened for centuries, for generations, that
mm,
women do
mm.
this and men do that, and whatever it is. But overall, that's more again a very internal question. And so
Yes.
even myself, I'm not a builder myself, but I've always had this, like what I've said, this curious mind about how can we change the world? How
Mm.
can we disrupt the systems, whatever that means? And sometimes it does take a bit of quiet courage to do so. Oh,
Yeah.
you're a female, you don't know how to build. I said, well, sometimes I have to prove you wrong.
Yes. You
What I
also,
mean by that is basically even educating more women how to basically give it a go. Give it
yes.
a go.
And also
Yeah, that's what
because
we're
you're
teaching, getting more women to build and build their own homes. Yeah,
yeah.
as such.
And so but there's also a plethora of information available to you. One of the things that so for me, my core principle is that love is the way. What is the most loving, kind, caring, compassionate thing to do? And that is both in the, butterfly unicorns, very fluffy, soft, flexible way, and it's also in the fierce, strong, boundaried, hell no way. It's because love encompasses both to me. Um, and in the like what we do for ourselves, one of like what I see is like the lifting the veils, the work that we do for ourselves also affect other people, because the more you are in alignment with who you are in truth, the more you recognize who you are, the more you are in that space, the more you can allow others to be the same, the more it's like a ripple effect. It just spreads. And so I love that, and I love the idea of, and I've seen the globe domes. I love. It's funny because now I'm just realizing that I actually saw a globe dome, something or a construction like the globe dome, and I'll share that in link in the description. But I saw that construction, I think last year, and I loved the construction of it. And now I'm just realizing that now that we've come together, and that's part of what you do, is like, whoa, there was a connection there as well. Absolutely beautiful. We have time is, oh, one thing I want to, because also with what you're sharing in terms of your ancestors and people and connection, um, there's also an access to information that, because what I've found, the more that I've lifted the veils, the more that I have, worked energetically and spiritually with myself on all levels, the more information that I don't necessarily know I seem to have access to. Does that make sense? It's like I call it the universal database. It's like there are things that that I know that I've never read in a book, that I've never had anyone teach me, but that I know how to do, or I know how to find, or I know, and they will just quote unquote appear. And that to me is tapping into that universal database. And so it's not just because with the globe dome in terms, it's not just in terms of the women, but it's also tapping into your ancestors' knowledge in bringing forth these solutions. Am I putting words in your mouth? I don't know.
No. Basically, you're just only adding to what I believe as well, is that, the universe has infinite power. It has infinite energy. It has, and so sometimes it takes, like the analogy that I use of, like, it takes for myself, like taking off my colored glasses and seeing things how like others see it, and actually putting my own pair of glasses on and actually seeing life for what it is. And this is where, when I have like more beliefs, or even an internal yearn to learn about something, I notice that just different channels open up, whatever, whoever, however. Even if I put it back to this career path of the domes, is overall, a lot of people don't know the healing spiritualities behind the shapes of domes. That's part of creative therapy. And people just feel this sensitivity of, wow, it's not the square rectangle blocks and buildings like the typical homes, wherever it is, but there's just this shape, and it's part of the creative therapy space.
Yes.
It helps with grounding of anxiety, depression, a lot of that. And people think, oh, great, this is a house and it's easy to build and all this, not much wood and all these things. Yes, that is basically the logical facts, but do we know the spiritual meanings behind it
Wow.
and all? And
So
so
it's
that's
not
what I was
just the
saying about
shape.
languages. So people think, and people, it's just one of these experiences, just like nature. We can be anywhere in this world. We can either grown up in the city, or we don't like the same foods as our family members. Yet when we go out and see the beach, there's just this feeling of nothing else matters, just beautiful. And so the same thing with just different experiences in life, that we all have our own interpretations of the different experiences. But like what I was saying about creative therapy, even the shape of domes, that's more in the healing space, and it helps with the neurological challenges of grounding, of peace, of tranquility. A lot of people don't know that yet as such. So that's kind of part of what's drawn me down this path, is more even sustainable living to even helping people to build their own homes, because that good old that saying, nothing beats homemade. So when you've added time and skills and energy to build your own home, you look after it better. There's this extra
Yes.
feeling, I built that, so just take care of it.
Yeah.
And same thing with sleeping in it, there's meaning to it. And there's
Yes.
when there's something has a story, a history, a meaning to
Yes.
it, that this is from my grandmother, or my grandfather built that,
Mm,
or this is what, yeah, this is the word that I got taught from my parents.
mm,
Whatever it is, there's
mm,
meaning and value to it. And that's what we hold on to. Of all things, even though there's not the houses or the cars or anything that go into the earth with us when we're buried, it's more overall what we've learned, our values, our
mm.
stories, our beliefs, what we spiritually hold. That as
Yes.
we're born into this world naked with spirit and life, we also leave this world the same way as well.
Adele, is there any final words, any advice or guidance you wanna give, anything to finish us off, or have
Yeah.
everything been shared?
Mhm. I know that, yeah, overall with this principle of spirituality and all, it's been a very natural part of me, and a natural part of especially indigenous culture. So we all bring our own stories, our own
Mm,
perspectives, our own, drops of life, whatever that means.
mm,
But just to if there's a message that I would like to share with anyone, is the two words aroha and also kotahitanga. Aroha means, to find love, share love. Aroha mai, aroha atu. Give love, share love, as such. And also the other words, kotahitanga, is to be one, be authentic,
mm,
discover the real authentic you. And
mm,
sometimes we don't even know that we don't know ourselves, or maybe we know part of ourselves,
mm,
or we know we've got basically this block and that block, and we have to do away with that one. And it's just like, again, rebuilding ourselves and all. And we all, whichever way, whatever that way, that means we have these start again time periods. That
mm,
whatever that means, and it's not always, say, moving country or moving house. It could be just here and now. It could be a new start of what we eat, or
yeah.
even a career pathway, or it may not even be any like outside changes. It's more an inward change of overall, how do we see ourselves when we look in the mirror? Are we as proud to see ourselves as our parents and grandparents, or even who we call Eo Matua, God, sees us as overall the most important, out of everyone else's opinions, the most important thing is how we think of ourselves. No
Mm,
one else, us. And that's basically makes our self-mastery, if we want to call it self-mastery, is overall, who do we believe of ourselves? Because that's basically what drives us through the storms, through the sunshines of life, is overall who we think of ourselves. So be strong, have your foundations, love and believe yourself, because it impacts how we communicate and socialize with other people out there in society. And also, that's my best advice. And just in a few short words, kia kaha, kia maia, kia manawa nui. Basically, just be strong, be courageous, and have faith.
no words needed. Thank you so much for having been part of this conversation. I will share the links so everyone can go find Adele and her beautiful globe domes and everything else. I will share that in the links. Thank you for now, and to everyone listening or watching, have a wonderful day. That is what I have for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Serafina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.